Thank you, Hollis. It's tremendous to be here with you. Thank you. And thank you to Steve. Let's give him a round of applause. Should be a governor round, maybe the next governor. So I also want to give a shout out to Chuck and Janelle Fossey, who are here in the front row. They're not from Hollis, they're from Goffstown. But if you pay attention to news clippings, you know that they are the recipients of the New Hampshire Freedom Dividend, where I'm giving $1,000 a month to families here in New Hampshire that represents the issues that many Americans are facing. Do not have body people just mic you up randomly while you're talking. It's a joy. It's one of the many joys. So I went to high school here in New Hampshire. I went to Phillips Exeter Academy, graduated in '92. They just had me back to speak a few months ago. That's what another thing that happens when you run for president. So your old high school has you back to speak. And so I went back there, and I had not been back in 27 years. And I said to them, hey, I haven't been back because I didn't really enjoy my time here that much. And then when I said that to the student body at Phillips Exeter, there was this rousing burst of applause. I was like, holy cow. Administrator seeing this? It's like, God, it was just unexpected. So I spent 2 very formative years here in New Hampshire. I went to Brown University, not that far away, studied economics and political science. I did not know what to do, so I went to law school. Anyone here do that? I spent 5 unhappy months as a lawyer, and then I left to start a business. How many of you have started a business or an organization or a volunteer organization? So if you have your hand up, you know it is brutally difficult. And unfortunately, when someone asks you how things are going, you always have to say, it's great. Because you can't be like, oh, it's really difficult. And be like, I don't want to buy your stuff. So I started this business in my 20s that had its mini rise and maximum fall. My parents were still telling people I was a lawyer. They were like, Andrew's very successful. My business failed. But then I picked myself up. I worked on another small technology company, and then I became the head of an education company, and I grew to become quite successful and was acquired by a public company in 2009. Now, how was 2009 here in Hollis? This was like the back end of the financial crisis. Like, how hard hit was this area? Hard. Gary says maybe not as bad as others. So, from my vantage point, I thought I kind of knew why the financial crisis had happened. And it was because many of my friends from Exeter had gone straight to Wall Street and were becoming Wall Street whiz kids. And eventually they built up these very sophisticated financial instruments that crashed the economy. And I said, that is messed up. That we need to have something better for our young, ambitious people to do than become whiz kids on Wall Street or McKinsey and consulting firms or now in Silicon Valley. So I quit my job to start an organization called Venture for America. And what Venture for America did was we trained entrepreneurs to start businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Providence, Birmingham, and other cities around the country. I put in some of my own money, started calling rich friends, and I asked them, do you love America? The savvy among them said, what does it mean if I say yes to this question? I said, at least $10,000. And then told them, said, I love America for $10,000. And I was like, oh, great, then send it on over. So we had a couple $100,000 to start, organization grew and grew, helped create several thousand jobs around the country, was honored by the Obama administration as an ambassador of entrepreneurship. So I got to bring my wife to visit the president. My in-laws were very happy with me for about a week. I forgot who I was for a week or so. Well, so there I was, and I had never been, I'm a Northeastern product, I had never been to Ohio, Michigan, Alabama, Louisiana, Missouri until building Venture for America. And I was staggered by the disparity between regions, where if you fly between Missouri and Manhattan, or Ohio and San Francisco, you feel like you're spanning decades and ways of life, more than just a few time zones. And then Donald Trump became our president in 2016. How many of you voted for Donald Trump? Don't be shy, it's cool.
Hell no.
Well, this is a Democratic gathering, obviously, of many Democratic groups, so there might not be many Trump voters here, but you know many of your neighbors voted for Donald Trump. Tens of millions of our fellow citizens voted for Donald Trump. And to me, this was a giant red flag. This was like a stop sign where tens of millions of Americans were so desperate that they turned to a narcissistic reality TV star as our president. And so the explanations we were getting in the press centered on things like Russia and FBI and Facebook, and I thought they were missing the fundamental point. The fundamental point, when I dug into the numbers and the data, was that we'd automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa. Those states sound familiar. It's all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win, and did win. And now my friends in Silicon Valley know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we will now do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and on through the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in New Hampshire? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, that's right. Amazon's like a giant vacuum sucking up $20 billion in business from your communities every year. It's pushing 30% of Main Street stores and malls to close. And that's what you're seeing. What's the most common job in the US economy? Retail. It's being a retailer clerk at these stores that are now closing. The average retail worker is a 39-year-old woman making between $10 and $11 an hour. So what does she do when those stores and malls close? How much did Amazon pay in federal taxes last year? Zero. So think about that situation. Sucking up 20 billion, your store's closed, you lose your most common jobs, and you get zero. It's not just retail. What do you all do when you call a customer service line and you get one of those bots? You know, it's like, hello, like, what do you do? You start pounding buttons, what do you do? You pound zero, you say human, 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 and then eventually it gives up and it gives you a human, and you're like, oh my goodness, you breathe like a sigh of relief, you're like, oh, a person. That's what I do too, because those bots are super irritating. But we are about 2 years away from the bots sounding like this. Hey Andrew, what can I do for you? And then I'll be like, oh, I need this. And they're like, sure, I'll take care of that for you. And then you'll actually find it to be very seamless and easy. You might not even realize it's software. 2 years away. There are 2.5 million Americans and thousands here in New Hampshire who work at call centers, making on average $14 an hour. And when AI can outperform the average call center worker, that's not going to affect thousands of jobs. It's going to affect tens or hundreds of thousands of jobs. Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states, and my friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves. Why do they care so much about self-driving trucks? It's for the money. $168 billion a year in financial incentives to automate truck driving. Now, self-driving trucks, they tell me they're 98% of the way there. Self-driving trucks are very bad at dealing with something called snow, because they rely upon road markings. So it's like, if it snows, then the computer doesn't know what to do. And you can't have a 2% error rate on semi-trucks, because that would have like a major problem. So the way that they think they can get the last 2%, do you all remember the first time you actually watched fairly clear video on your phone? You know, maybe it was a sporting event. You guys remember the first time it happened? And then you were like, wow, we can do this now? Remember that? It's like 3G, 4G. We're now deploying 5G. And what they're saying they can do with 5G is that they can have teleoperators beam into the cab of a truck. So let's say the self-driving truck's doing its thing, going across the country, and then the computer doesn't know what to do because of bad weather. It will then beep, and then a teleoperator will beam into that truck from a warehouse in Nevada or Arizona, take over the truck like a video game, have cameras that make it so they can see what's going on, and then just drive the truck until the computer says, I've got it from here, and then the teleoperator beams back out. What do you think the ratio is going to be between teleoperators and the 3.5 million Americans who drive trucks for a living?
1%?
3%, 5%, 1 to 3%. It's going to be a very, very small percentage. So what then happens to the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living right now? 94% men, average age 49, make about $46,000 a year. There were a number of truckers that recently protested in Indiana. They did something called a slow roll, which is they just slowed their trucks down. And then traffic then also obviously slowed behind them. And everyone's like, why are we all going so slow? Why were the truckers protesting? They were protesting digital monitoring of their driving time. Because when you're a truck driver, you're not allowed to drive for more than 14 hours. Then the truck will start beeping at you and then you have to go to sleep. How do you think the truckers will respond when it's not digital monitoring of their driving time, but it's actually robot trucks that will take their jobs?
Not very happy.
violently, not very well. We're in the third inning of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. And Donald Trump is a manifestation of this, but he's not the cause. And as Steve said, it is not immigrants that are causing these dislocations around the country. It is an advancing set of innovations that are then pushing more and more Americans to the sidelines. So this is what I was digging into in 2017. I'm friends with people in Silicon Valley. I'm like, hey guys, how are the self-driving trucks going? They say 98% of the way there, 5 to 10 years. And I was like, you do realize it's going to be a total disaster for the 3.5 million truck drivers and the over 7 million Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that need the truckers to get out and get a meal. And my friends in Silicon Valley, it's like, yeah, I sometimes worry about that. But again, $168 billion a year. So my friends who are engineers and investors are just plowing money to try and solve the problem. And in their minds, it's not their responsibility to figure out the downstream effects of what happens in society as a result of their work. And here's the thing that some of you may disagree with, but they are right. It is not their job. Whose job is it? It's our job. It's the government's job. And I have to say, I'm here with you today because it's going to be the people of New Hampshire that set a vision for the country. It's now your job. I hate to bust this on you on like a nice Saturday afternoon and say, hey, it's your job to save us. It's your job to save us. So I was unpacking all of this information, and I went to my friends in Washington, D.C. in 2017. I said, what are we going to do about the fact that we are undergoing the greatest economic and technological transformation in our country's history, and we don't even understand? No one's talking about it. When's the last time you've heard a politician say the words fourth industrial revolution? This is the first time, right? Though I'm barely a politician. Though I seem more like a politician every day. Because now I tell stories about New Hampshire and Iowa. I'm like, I remember when I was in that. Anyway. So I went to the folks in Washington, D.C., and I said, what are we going to do? And what do you think they said to me when I asked them, what are we going to do? Yeah, you can tell they were very eager to have this conversation. She's like, oh great, someone's here to talk to us about that. Now, the three responses I got were, number one, we cannot talk about this. That's a direct quote from one of our leaders. We cannot talk about this. Number two, we should study that. Number three, this is the most common, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. And that sounds very practical. But you're laughing. Charlie's laughing. And I think Charlie's laughing because of what you all know instinctively, which is that retraining programs don't work at that high rate. And I looked into the research. Do you all want to guess how effective government-funded retraining programs were for the displaced manufacturing workers of the Midwest? 0 to 15%. It's essentially a non-solution. So then when I said this to the folks in DC, I said, hey, I looked at the studies. We are terrible at retraining. You know what they said to me? They said, I guess we'll get better.
Oh, yeah.
That's what passes for policy discussion in our nation's capital. And one person in DC said something to me that has brought me here to you today. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about the problems you're describing because this town is not a town of leaders, this is a town of followers. And the only way we will do anything about this set of challenges is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads here in DC. And I heard that and I said, challenge accepted. And that is why I'm here with you today. So how are we going to wake our leaders? How are we going to wake up the folks in DC? The fact we understand what's going on in our economy better than they do. Now, if you're here today, you've heard something like this. There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Oh, and one reason why I love the Fosse family is that, like, you think about $1,000 a month and you see what $1,000 a month actually means in real life. What does it mean? It means you pay for car repairs. It means you have a bit less stress. It means when you send your daughter to college, you might actually be able to make the tuition payment instead of just sending it out to loans to accrue interest. That's what it means in real life for Americans. Now, the $1,000 a month dividend might seem dramatic to you now, but it's actually been with us, this idea of a dividend, since the founding of the country. Thomas Paine was for it, called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrate every year, championed it in 1967, called it the guaranteed minimum income. And it was what he was fighting for the year before he was assassinated in 1968. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be tremendous for America. It was so mainstream that it passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon. It was called the Family Assistance Plan, and it would have guaranteed an income of $30,000 to a family of four. Imagine that had passed, came this close. Then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year. No questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
And how does Alaska pay for it?
Fossil
And
fuels.
what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology, software, robots, AI, big data,
Plastics.
self-driving cars. That's all the oil of the 21st century. What they're doing with oil money in Alaska, we can do for everyone here in New Hampshire and everyone around the country with technology. They call it the oil check in Alaska. We're going to call this the tech check. And everyone's going to love their tech check. Make everyone be like a fan. Be like, oh, I like Amazon again because I'm getting $1,000 a month. So I want you to imagine, after I am president in 2021, thank you, Hollis, New Hampshire. After I'm president in 2021 and you start getting these dividends, you're like, wow, we did it, the government did it, getting these dividends. How would you spend the money? Where would it go?
Groceries.
Groceries?
Tax payments.
A little bit would float up to Amazon and again. You buy an extra toaster, student loans, but a lot of it, most of it, would stay right here in your communities. It would go to the hardware store and local tutoring services and cleaning ladies, babysitters, the occasional night out. The money would circulate over and over again in your local communities. It would grow your consumer economy by more than 15%. It would create at least 20,000 new jobs right here in New Hampshire. It would be a huge boon for rural areas because $1,000 a month obviously goes very, very far in rural areas. It would also create pathways for your children to see their future here in New Hampshire as opposed to thinking that they have to leave to access different types of opportunities. This is the trickle-up economy, from people and families and communities up, and this would actually work. Now, when I talk about this sort of thing in other parts of the country, they literally are like, this is too good to be true. And it is too good to be true unless you are standing in New Hampshire, because you all actually can make it happen very, very quickly. If you embrace the vision of a trickle-up economy, it can sweep the country like wildfire in 2020. That is the power you have. And when people around the country ask me, hey, what do you think about New Hampshire having so much power? I tell them honestly, I think it's great. In part because if you had that power, you have no idea what to do. Because no other state has the heritage you all have. You get to roll out, what number presidential candidate am I even, in terms of how many of us have you seen? Go ahead and hold up a hand, how many? 5, 4, 5. That's what I'm talking about. And the wonderful thing about New Hampshire is you're not even comparing me to the other candidates. You're comparing me to candidates from 08. You're comparing me to candidates from 88. That is like the political culture that you have built up. This is why you have this power and this privilege. And you need to use that power and privilege this time to set us on a better path as quickly as possible. Because this buzzsaw is about to really speed up when AI actually hits the ground and starts transforming organizations. I just spoke to a group of 70 CEOs in New York, and I asked them, how many of you are looking at using AI to replace back office workers? How many hands went up? All of them, all 70. You talk to CEOs, they are using this because what are their incentives? Their incentives are the bottom line. And if some technologist comes out and says, hey, I can replace 1,000 of your workers with this software, this AI, all you have to do is pay me $2 million a year, and they look up and say, that would save me a lot of money. They can actually be fired for not using that AI. That's just